Good morning, everyone. Dex here from Autodesk. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, What's New in Revit 2020. We will have technical consultant Tomislav presenting for us. So first, we'll just go through a bit about Autodesk. So we're a leading provider of design technology and services to engineering and architecture professionals. With over 20 years of local experience, we provide the expertise, training, and support to help companies realize the full potential of the design technology. The Autodesk mission is to deliver industry-leading services to the engineering, construction, and architecture communities. We work with clients and companies of any size, nationally and abroad. Let's get started, Tom.
Thanks, Dexter. I guess I'll just give myself a quick introduction before kicking off with the webinar. My name is Tomislav Golubovic. I've been in, I guess, the AEC or even mechanical industries for over 20 years. Started off in Brisbane and QT as a civil, doing an associate diploma in civil engineering, then ended up in doing piping, mining, oil and gas, onshore, offshore, car park, shopping centres, houses, working on planes, working on submarines, and worked for a whole bunch of companies between Melbourne and Brisbane. And most recently, I was at Autodesk for 8 years. Previous to that, I was a piper and a CAD administrator at Worley Parsons. So I do have a lot of technical background in regards to the drafting and design side of things, plus also in regards to setting up projects and Plant 3D or Revit or civil, whatever it may be. And you can see on the screen there some of the samples that I have worked on, whether it's on InfoWorks down there at the bottom right, talking about roads, or you got Plant 3D at the top right there, working with advanced steel, and then even with Navisworks down there at the bottom left, doing animations and timeliners. So today's webinar is all about Revit 2020 and some of the new features and enhancements that came out. Now, like all other previous years, the latest version of Revit obviously does include the previous year's updates as well. So basically, you're always going to be on the latest and greatest if you are working on the latest Autodesk software. So just quickly as an overview for today's webinar, we're going to look at some of the things that we can do in regards to sort of connecting between files and models and creating elements, so things like elliptical walls, propagating steel connections, and then even optimizing. So path of travel, which we will actually go through in the demo at the end, and obviously updates in regards to Dynamo, steel connections, any material appearance and user interface improvements, and a little bit of electrical down there, electrical panel feed through lugs kind of connections there as well. So firstly to kick off is PDF into Revit. So I know this has been around for AutoCAD for a while, but now you can insert a PDF into Revit, and it's going to be placed there as a 2D object in that current view. So you can also resize it. It's got the functionality of other raster images that you can do in there. So we can move, mirror, copy, rotate, do all that sort of stuff with the PDFs, and if it has vector data in there as well, so we can pick lines on it if we want to trace over that PDF there. So again, like the AutoCAD side of things, you just have to, it just depends on where that PDF came from and whether we can just reuse some of that data possibly, or just trace over it by eye as well. Okay, so if you are in the kind of industry where you are maybe reusing an old PDF for a drawing, then this might come in handy instead of maybe having to do a workflow of bringing it into AutoCAD and then Revit. You can put those PDFs directly into Revit itself. Publishing cloud models on Revit. So there was I think it was around the 19 or 20, there was an update to just uploading it to BIM 360. So this isn't part of the Collaborate, but it's just publishing it to yourself to BIM 360. So there is a new launch screen there. So I guess if you have been using it, you see some minor updates for that there as well. And the cloud models for Revit, it allows you to store and access those models on the BIM 360 platform, for editing or for syncing as well. So, excuse me. So this gives you the ability to connect to BIM 360 and who don't have a need for the collaboration side of things, but still lets you work on the cloud there as well. So I am sort of a sole trader, so for me it'd be handy to upload a Revit model into BIM 360 and then maybe go to site and either do it from maybe another PC or do it from my PC, where I can just upload it off the cloud and then use an iPad or whatnot to do those markups in there as well. A big one I know that will affect possibly more the architects that are on the call today is support for SketchUp 2018 in there as well. I personally don't use it, but I have come across a lot of people that do use it. But you can see that there are some updates for SketchUp 2018. So if you are using it and you are on Revit 2020, it might be a good idea to check it out and see how that can work with your workflows and see if you can make yourself a little bit more efficient, I guess. For the sort of more mechanical kind of minded people on the call, so there is the extension for fabrication export. So I know that there has been linking in the past between the fabrication products outside of Revit. So they're the CAD, MEP, the STMEP, and the CamDuct products. So you can see that little icon there for the import and export side of things, but you can generate that data in a CSV format, so you can use that in spreadsheets or other data environments that need to use that CSV. So again, if you're on this call and you're viewing this webinar and it is something that you can do and it might have been an issue for you in the past, have a look at that fabrication exports where you can export that fabrication data. So again, just increasing your efficiency on the project. Now, elliptical walls. So this is new and this is not in 19. So now we can come in here and draw an elliptical wall like any other walls in Revit. We can make them, whether it's a basic wall, whether it's a block wall with studs or timber studs or steel studs, you can come in here and do these elliptical shapes. So if you, again, the kind of designer who requires the use of an elliptical wall, then have a look at it in 2020 there. So when you do place a wall, you do get that new option up the top there. Instead of doing orthogonal kind of lines or squares or rectangles or whatever, then you do have this option in there as well. Other behaviors that still apply, so things like doing any wall joins, openings, any family hosting as well still work. So they do act like a normal wall. It's just that you have them in an elliptical shape. So improved rebar copy and move logic. So basically, if you can see there that there's a shape there that has it on a slope, so we can copy that and it maintains that cover there as well. Shape-driven rebar segments are now also automatically constrained to the concrete host face. If that's something that you do have a look at in your line of work, then again, have a look at it and check it out. And I know in recent times where Revit gave the ability to put rebar on new curved shapes and other sort of forms. So this is only just going to keep expanding over the years and years. So other things like standard bars will snap to stirrups automatically when a standard and stirrup set are distributed in the same direction. None of those bars will also they won't automatically snap to the stirrup segments. When you manually select a constraint target, that constraint is set as preferred as well. So, having these enhancements will just, be more predictable in its behavior when copying and moving that driven shape rebar as well for better accuracy and higher design intent. So multi-rebar annotations can also now be used to dimension the position of those rebar sets with respect to the concrete host faces. The tag inside that annotation only extracts information from the rebar reference. And there must be at least, to use these annotations, there must be at least 2 rebar references or one rebar and one regular one in the selection there. So again, if it's something that's sort of been a bit of a gripe and something that you've wanted on a Revit wish list, then have a look at it in Revit 2020. Multi-rebar annotations can now be used to dimension those freeform rebar sets with planar and parallel bars in any view that is perpendicular to those bar planes, and they can also be used for dimensioning rebar sets in structural elements inclined with respect to the view. The rebar sets can either be freeform or shape-driven and must be made up of a single element parallel bars with or without hooks there as well. So again, just better enhancements in regards to the annotation for the look and the feel of all of those rebars on your Revit project. And this is another one. I actually really kind of like this graphic because it just demonstrates the capability of it. So any type of reinforcement that is including shape-driven or freeform rebars can be hosted in model in place structural elements or the stairs category there as well. So again, just looking at that graphic, you can see the extent of the rebar that we can do for those stairs. So you just create a stair component that is unique to the project, and you know, the rebar will follow that form there as well. Steel connection propagation. So this is something that we're going to have a look at in the demo towards the end of this webinar. So the propagation feature is useful, you know, when you are working on a large project, and you'll see in the demo. So what we're going to do is put it on one type of connection and then propagate that connection through the rest of the model there as well. So whether it's obviously, you know, dependent on a few certain conditions, but you'll see at the end of this webinar when I do present it that I've got one connection, and around the frame that I've got there, it'll propagate the rest of them there. So instead of you know, for the steel modelers, I won't say steel detailers because Advanced Steel is a steel detailing tool, but within Revit, if you need to show these on a particular project or a frame or a building or structure or whatever it may be, so you can do one and then propagate it for the rest of the project there as well. Excuse me. So you don't have to go around and spend minutes or hours even just going through and propagating them yourself. Grouping steel connections. So the UI has been migrated to type parameters, making it easier to configure. There is a preview command there to design the steel connections more efficiently with the ability to control those components more effectively. We can customize the type for those connection families based on certain parameters and save it as a name there as well. So I know the steel connections have been updated a lot for Revit over the last few years, and slowly getting to the point where it's just going to be easier to go from Revit to Advanced Steel and back again, which you can do now, but more and more connections are being added and more smart. So again, the transition from a Revit structural model to Advanced Steel is just going to be easier and better. New features for tags and dimensions of those steel elements. So existing dimensioning and tagging tools are extended to create more accurate and readable engineering drawings for structural steel. You can dimension the radial dimension or diameter of circular openings in there. You can insert a dimension between holes or shear studs by selecting their centers there as well. So I'm not going to show that today, but like I say, for every webinar that I do, if it's something that you want to see, please let the guys and girls at RedStack know, and then we can do an online demonstration, something in particular for your needs and requirements. On the electrical side of things, so electrical home run wiring improvements, so more control over the display of the home run wiring. There are three main areas of improvement there. So user definable home run arrow style, so customizing or tailoring those arrows to suit your graphical preferences, multi-circuit home run arrow control, and additional optioning for wiring tick marks, so enabling control on multi-circuit home runs. So again, if you're on this call and you do sort of more electrical sort of things, then have a look at this, and hopefully it satisfies your needs and requirements on those. Electrical panel feeds through lug connections. So there was previous to this release, there was sort of some workarounds that you needed to do, create and document feed through lug panel connections. So now, instead of employing a breaker slot connection, panels can now be connected through feed lugs. I'm sorry to say I'm not an electrical person, but again, if this makes sense to you on the call, then hopefully it satisfies anything that you've been wanting to do on Revit as well. So the downstream panel loads are totaled on the parent panel. The improved system logic makes it easier to verify load connections, test the panel circuit numbering options, and modify existing panel schedules. Path of travel. Now, this is something I will also cover quickly in the demo after this webinar. So you can basically pick a couple rooms and it will go through and find the best path of travel there. So it'll find that the shortest distance between 2 points on a floor plan. It analyzes the geometry in the plan and goes around obstacles and through doors to optimize the route. So again, hang back after this presentation and I'll show you how that works live. So it's under the Analyze tab of the ribbon. So we can pick a start point in one room and then maybe go through a hallway and then go through to the end room there. So it is actually a path element, so you can change the line styles and you can see the length of it and the time it takes to walk that path there as well. So you know, really handy, I guess. You know, this image there shows it on a hospital. I guess if it's something that you need to do, then you can determine the path line, that travel line, how long it's going to take and how long it's going to walk through there as well. So again, I will go through that in a little bit more detail later. Improvements in the view filter. So it's an improved version of the OR filter that already exists in Revit. So you can choose a specific category of an OR filter and then choose a specific parameter there as well. So previously only common parameters were available, but now you've got a lot more freedom and flexibility in there as well. For the sort of people on the call who are concerned about material appearance, so there is more improvements on there. So there's a new bunch of appearance assets which use physically based definitions. These assets enrich the material library and can enhance the visualization experience. So if you are doing it through Revit, again, you've got greater assets and detail in there as well. In regards to the user interface improvements, so there's three sort of main things there. You can filter materials by class with a new icon. You can also access those material libraries at the bottom of the browser, and you can also select a larger thumbnail if you need to see it there as well. So again, for people who aren't necessarily maybe using 3ds or other sort of tools where you can render and visualize the model, you can do it within Revit now with a few improvements there. Excuse me, image and PDF improvements. So a handful of for images, for a handful of improvements for images and PDFs. There's a tooltip there that you can have. There's BIM 360 and desktop connector paths have been enabled. So that way, again, if you're working off the cloud, you can link directly off those there, and an option for relative paths as well. There are also improvements to the scale and size functionality for images. Direct modification of those parameters has been enabled, and width and height are now reported in a meaningful format. Tag schedules and view filters for elevations. So we are able now to tag, scheduleize, and utilize view filters for the elevation from level parameter associated with elements. So for things like MEP, mechanical, plumbing, lighting, electrical, with these enhancements, we can use the elevation from level as a built-in parameter for tagging, scheduling, and view filters. So the aim of this was to remove barriers in easily defining the content tags and schedules, ultimately giving us the ability to create, annotate, and document with that information there as well. Track and edit the scope box parameter in a view list. So with this feature, the scope box parameter may now be included in a view list. It is possible to change the scope box by selecting this in the schedule rather than in the view, allowing you to coordinate crop regions across multiple views without having to open each view. So again, can quite be handy for people who use a lot of scope boxes, so that way you can do it straight from the schedule without having to open up all those views again. And we can also copy and paste legends across sheets. So we can take a legend view from one sheet, copy it to the clipboard, and paste it to other places in a variety of ways. This will allow you to manually place select views and paste to the current view or paste in the same place. Creating parts from imported geometry. So if we're importing from InfraWorks or IFC, we can split and cut them for construction, and then Revit and linking IFC creates a Revit file with imported geometry for parts. So with this, we can create parts from the direct shape geometry and use this to work, it helps us with the workflow of InfraWorks to Revit. And we can define lines using other parts for construction or detailing. So again, if you're working with a lot of IFC, whether it's coming from other Autodesk packages or whether it's coming from other non-Autodesk packages, you'll see some improvements there in your workflows. The InfoCenter Reduction, so just a little thing for the InfoCenter, which is at the top right of your Revit window. So you can see there for 2019.2, it was quite long, and then they've just reduced that with a little bit of a flyout. So if you're on smaller resolution screens, I guess this could probably be too long for you, but otherwise if you're on HD or even 4K screens, it's probably not going to matter too much. But again, you have that ability there to hide out that info center there if you need to. Dynamo 2.1 ships with 2020. So if you are a Dynamo user, you'll see updates to Dynamo in there. I have spoken about Dynamo in the past before, whether it's on webinars or on my YouTube channel as well. So if you are so inclined, like as a programmer, so visual programming in there, it can read a Revit file and then make changes to those elements, or you can even start off a new project just by selecting, in a pull down or slider bars within Dynamo, and then have Revit build up that project as well. So if you haven't had a look at it, do check it out. If you do have a bit of a background in program, you'll find it easy. Even if you don't, you can go through certain blogs and websites to see Dynamo and see how it works. And it can shorten the time to do certain tasks from, again, from hours or days right down to sort of seconds or even minutes. But again, just repetitive tasks. Have a look at using Dynamo for that sort of stuff there. Also now steel connections are included in Dynamo. So if you wanted to do a whole bunch of connections at certain nodes or joints, then you can do that from the Dynamo script. So similar to the propagation tool, where you can just propagate the rest of them, you can have here in Dynamo to say that you can see that apex haunch up there, so you can say that it needs to be a particular style of connection in there. I'm not going to necessarily go through that today, but do have a look at inside Revit. There is a Dynamo player, and there should be some samples in there as well. If not, have a look at the help file, and there should be some help files for Dynamo and some of those scripts in there as well. And you can see down the bottom there, that's what Dynamo looks like. So you're basically taking an input, whether it's a user definable selection or whether it finds something in the model, and then it basically takes that answer or result and then does something with it. So whether you're doing a change of family, or whether you're adjusting an angle or a value, whether you're doing a mathematical function on it, and it takes that result and it passes it through to the next element. And then you can see there, so for that sample, there are 6 sort of groups in there, and then ultimately on the far left, someone picks something, and then on the far right, it displays the number of created connections there for each of the runs. So that's what the Dynamo interface looks like. Enhanced performance for those detailed models. If you have been doing a lot of that, you'll, again, like me, I've done it a lot, and the performance of the steel connections was sometimes a little bit slow, and I was playing around with this a couple of days ago, and it has gotten better. So if you are using a lot of these connections in there, you'll see that the performance should be a lot quicker as well when you're doing a lot of these. So if you haven't, again, as part of this, feel free to update to 2020 and check it out and see if it can help you with your workflows. There are more parameters for steel components, so there are new parameters at hand, so plate width and length. You have the ability to tag or schedule structural connections and see advanced information like the plate dimensions within those, and just gives you a better understanding of those steel components in there as well from a steel side. On the MEP or HVAC or services side, you can change a service which is enhanced for that fabrication ductwork to allow a selection service to be swapped while giving the user ability to retain its original shape. Gives you greater control and more predictable results, and we can also modify the shape and their sizes by picking the new select group option there as well. So the bottom line of that is we can easily change or retain duct shapes with that change service functionality in there. Okay, so now just a quick demo of 3 of the functions in there. So firstly is the path tool. So I'm using the standard Revit house. So you can see up there, it's just the RAC basic sample project. So the rooms are already defined. So if I go to the Analyze tab, and on the far right, it's the last button there. So if I wanted to say that I wanted to walk from the master bedroom, so within that room, you can see that we've gone from the master bed out to this window, and you can see there that we do have a path of travel. And if I do select that, it tells me that it's 5.8 meters long and it'll take 4 seconds to walk. Now, if I do another one and I say I'm going from the master bath to this bedroom, okay, and then same thing, I can see in here that it is 12.8 meters and it's going to take about 10 seconds to walk. So we can do that for basically the whole, if I say I want to walk out from this observation deck to this other deck, okay, so there it is, it's 32.5 meters and it's going to take about 20 seconds to walk through there. And you can see the path of travel has gone through the door, they're up around that hallway and out through this door in the bedroom there as well. So you can see it does take into account all of those obstacles. I apologize if it's a bit hard to see online, but that tool is there, and like I said, you can see on the right hand side here that it is actually a Revit element, and it is a path of travel. And if we do the same thing for level 1 in that project, so if I want to walk from the deck over to the kitchen, so if I go from this side of the deck to this, let's go to the outdoor dining, so it's found the shortest path that way. But if I also want to go through here down to the hallway, you can see it does take me through that doorway and then down through the stairs and down to the hallway there as well. So I guess particularly handy, you know, maybe for the architects or anyone who is doing planning on a project where you need to take into account the path of travel. You do have that functionality there within Revit. So I'll just close this one off. And now the steel propagations. So I've just got a, this is just some standard beams and members here. So I've got 4 columns, I've got 4 beams, and you can see over here in the corner, I've already got 2 types of connections in here. So if I pick one of them and then I right click on it and I say propagate the connection, okay, and hopefully it doesn't make a liar out of me. There it is there. So it's taken a few seconds, but you can see there that it's propagated that same connection. So for that you see on the flange side. So if I do the same for the other one on the web, okay, and you can see there it is there. And if I spin this model around, okay, so you can see how quick and easy it is to propagate those connections and get an understanding that if you've got a large model where certain conditions are met, you can basically go through and propagate all of those connections en masse without having to worry about trying to do them yourself. Now for the last one, I'm just going to load up just a blank architectural template, and I just wanted to show you those the elliptical walls. So I'm just going to do just a standard architectural wall, but you can see up here in the ribbon there, we can now pick an ellipse. Okay, so I'm just going to pick the center here, and you can see the functionality that I've got in there, and I can go through and orientate my ellipse whichever way I want, and plus as well I've got the ability to change those values there as well. So now that it's done, and if we switch to our 3D view, okay, so this particular wall is a basic double brick wall, but if I change it to a brick veneer, okay, and I switch to fine mode and wireframe, then you can see there that we do have those two types of walls in there. So this is the normal double brick, and this one is a brick veneer wall. Okay, so just a few things there for you to have a look at during the course of your day with Revit 2020. If there's anything else, like I said, in regards to something that is more applicable for whatever you work in, then please don't hesitate to let the guys at RedStack know. So I guess from here, we'll take some questions if there are any, Dexter.
Yep, so Tom, we got a couple of questions here from Sean and Caroline. So the first one is, can you schedule this for fire egress, from Sean?
Oh, for the path of travel?
Yeah, it was...
I guess so. I guess you could. I'd have to probably delve into it a bit deeper if it's for, is it for animating or is it just scheduling? Again, who asked that question?
That was Sean.
Sean
Handley.
Okay. Yeah, Sean, I'd say probably just whoever you're dealing with at RedStack, just ask them to give me a buzz, and maybe we can do an online demo for it and then have a bit of a deeper dive into what you want. I'd say it probably satisfies part of your need, but I don't exactly know if it's going to satisfy a schedule, but it's something we can have a look at.
Yep, you just mentioned it's just for scheduling.
I'd have to double check that, but yeah, get in touch and we can do an online demo and discussion about it.
Yep, thank you. And we have a question here as well from Caroline. So, can the path travel tool run across different floor levels?
Yes. So when you do it, I think I don't have it. There is a path of travel. It says which floor it starts on and which floor it ends on.
Yep, thank you. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes for any more questions.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, from room to room. Hang on, let me. No, sorry, I tell a porcupine it doesn't do it between floors. I'd have to double check that with the guys at Autodesk. I'll see if there is a trick to do it, but for the time being, it looks like it does on the level that you're on. So yeah, Caroline, I'd have to get back to you. So again, if you just email the guys at RedStack and pass your email through, and I can get back to you with a confirmation on that.
Yep, so I think we'll just wrap it up there, guys. So thanks again for joining us in today's webinar, everyone. If you have any more questions, you can contact us by email at solutions@redstack.com.au. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.